Excellent. Good evening. Um, Welcome to this year's session on trustee basics, trustee training. I am Gail Santee, the director of the Central Kansas Library System, and I have several colleagues with me tonight. Will you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Liz. I'm Liz Duclo. I am the new general consultant.
Thank you, Liz. Lacey?
I'm Lacey Steffen. I am the office assistant.
Lacey's the voice you most often hear when you make a phone call to us. Go ahead, next.
And good evening. I'm Patty Collins. I am a consultant here at CKLS, and welcome to trustee training. We'll be throwing various information in the chat for you, and we're going to let Gail do a couple of commercials for some things going on soon, and we'll pick up some more at the end. So Gail, if you want to go ahead and tell us about strategic plan.
Oh, sure. It's that time again. It seems that it just goes by so quickly, but it is time for CKLS to start the process of strategic planning for the next 5 years. What that is going to look like is, my goodness, it's kind of up in the air just yet. We will have a series of what we're calling conversations, because that's what it is. We're going to ask some questions and you are going to give us your answers. One of those questions will be, what do you see as challenges for your library for now and in the next 5 years? And how will you may help your librarians meet that challenge? But it will be informal. There will be dinner. We're in August 6th at the First Church of the Nazarene in Smith Center. August 8th at Tag's Bar and Grill in Scandia. August 19th at Papa's Burger Mill in Minneapolis, and August 21st at Merides in Russell. And we do require you to register for these. If you're interested in attending, you can register yourself at ckls.org. And up in the top right corner, it says register for an event, or you can have your librarian register for you. And we will be having fun. This is not an event where you can just come and just sit and watch, but this will be very participatory, the strategic planning conversations. And I very much welcome your input, and I very much welcome the input from your librarians as well. But that's enough about the future. Let's get started with what we're here for today. And that is trustee basics. Liz, will you start the slideshow for us, please? If you have questions, you may certainly unmute yourself and ask, or you can also type in the chat. And Patty or Liz or I, it doesn't bother us at all if you ask in the middle. We have a PowerPoint to bring us back on topic. Go ahead, Liz. So this is cheesy, but important. So one of the things that you need to know is sort of the hierarchy, or the way that information flows. CKLS works with the library board and the library director. Information frequently comes from us to either the board or to the director, but the biggest and most important relationship in this triangle here is the director and the library board. And you'll notice that that arrow goes both ways. Patty, do you want to say more about this?
This is just how I describe the relationships. And I just find that it's really important that the board and the director see that as a relationship that goes back and forth. Because if not, you either have a director that's out there flailing and doesn't have the guidance of the board, or the board is spending so much time micromanaging the library that the director is really they're just kind of hanging out. And so that relationship goes back and forth. And as Gail pointed out, CKLS's job is to help both you as board members and your library directors and staff.
Right. We're not the boss of the library. We're not the boss of the director. We're not the library police. We are your library friend, though. Go ahead, Liz.
A lot of the times we can see how good boards can help both their director and their patrons when they learn from their librarian, just as we can see the librarian providing such good information to their library board that they're able to help out more with the planning and the policy writing for the library. So
Mhm.
CKLS is here to offer help with those policies and stuff like that. And also to say, oh, hey, maybe you don't want to go into that direction. Maybe you want to go this way. But again, it's just one of those, the library board and the director should have a very good, open, clear communication. CKLS just kind of steps in when you need help.
I think my colleague in the Southwest Kansas Library System describes his organization as a consulting firm. Firm. There it is. I also would like to think that we're a sounding board. If the board is writing a policy and they're not sure if it first off follows the law or it's a really good idea, they can send that off to us at CKLS and we can help them with that. So there are several different types of libraries in Kansas. Most of you here are city libraries, but there are also township and district libraries. The number of library board members you must have by law is based on what kind of library you are. CKLS has 2 township libraries, that is Claflin and La Crosse, and we have 2 district libraries, Burr Oak and Cuba, Hillcrest at Cuba. The rest of you are all city libraries. That means that you have 7 members plus the mayor. The mayor does vote, and a quorum is 5. Now, the board is appointed by the head of the municipality, which is often the mayor, and approved by the governing body, which is your city commission or your city council. In a district library, it is very different. They are elected during their first meeting. It's the first Tuesday in March, and they elect up to 7 board members, and there is a quorum consists of 4 board members. That is for district libraries. I think all of you here tonight are city libraries. If you'd like to know more, CKLS has a set of sample bylaws for each kind of library, and it really kind of goes over what the statutes are, what the recommended practices are, who does what, and things like that. It's a very good training tool.
And we have updated those recently. I've kind of combed over them. There's a digital version that links to a lot of different things like the actual Kansas statutes. But what we've done is also include all of the call outs, like appendices. It used to be only like 3 things that were included. Now there's like, 20. But that means that you don't have to click every link. You can just print out the full form.
Thank you, Liz. So, how is a library board made? We know how many people are on the board. Library board members need to be residents of the city. They need to live within the city limits. Some communities have established, their city council has established a charter ordinance, and for the purposes of recruiting board members, they've expanded their boundaries. It's the tiny towns that most often have done this, and they may have established their boundaries now within their new school district. But if you're in a consolidated school district, that's a little tricky because you can't cross lines. It may be that it's county road this to county road that. It may be that it's within the township instead of just the city. That's how board members can be recruited, but they are not taxpayers. And so if you find that you need to increase your boundaries to recruit board members, we recommend in the bylaws that you put a limit on that. You don't want non-taxpayers to be the majority of a quorum because they don't really have a vested interest in that they're not paying taxes. The mayor is automatically, by position of their office, that's what ex officio means, a voting member, a full voting member of the board. The mayor can certainly appoint someone to attend meetings for them, but they cannot appoint a voting proxy because the mayor is counted in the quorum. What some towns have done, what some boards have done is they've established a relationship with their mayor, and maybe their mayor isn't able to attend meetings, but if the board can't make quorum, the mayor agrees to telephone in and be that last member that makes up the quorum so that the board can do business. That is perfectly fine. You just in your minutes would put under who's there, you would put that the mayor is attending by phone. Other board members can do that as well. So you may have someone who is a snowbird, and during December and January and February, they go someplace warm like Arizona, Florida. But otherwise they're in your town and you think that they'd make a good board member. They could also attend via phone during those 3 months. And that way, then for the other 9 months of the year, you would have them as a present board member. Other city officials are not eligible for appointment to the board. That would be a conflict of interest. Board members are what I think are some of the hardest working volunteers in your community, but as volunteers, you are not paid for your service. You can be reimbursed for actual expenses in doing your job. And it says mileage and meals, etc. Not miles and meals to every board meeting, but if as the board member, you are appointed or elected to be the voting representative of your library to attend the CKLS business meetings, you can certainly count mileage both ways if you are the one who is doing the driving. And you may certainly have a meal, and then the library would compensate for that. Board members cannot also be paid employees of the library because that would be incompatibility of office. Sometimes the board member is the person who does summer library program, but they can't be paid for that position because they are a board member, and board members are volunteer positions.
And kind of on the flip side of that, your library staff, even if it's just a one-person staff, they cannot volunteer for the library because they're paid to be the librarian. They have to be paid for the time that they work there.
That's right. Now, that comes with a caveat. The board is in charge of the budget. And so the board and the librarian need to get that two-way conversation going. And the library director might need to say, I'll be glad to run a booth at the fair, but I need to be paid for those hours. And I estimate that it's going to be 5 hours over my regular work week. The board needs to be able to have that information to make a good decision. Patty?
So you mentioned on your slide that the mayor is a voting member. Does the president or the chair of a library board have a vote?
Yes. Normally in Robert's rules, the chair is the tiebreaker, but that is different for libraries. The chair is a full board member with full board member privileges, and they vote in every vote. In every time there's a motion, the board member also votes and is counted towards that quorum.
However, your librarian is not, because they're just the technical advisor.
The
But they
librarian
don't
is
get a vote.
not a board member. They don't get a vote. They get to give lots of good information to the board. So terms of office for all library board members are 4 years. They actually expire April 30th, except for district libraries. Board members can serve 2 consecutive terms, one right after the other. But at the end of that second term, the board member must be off of the board for at least a year before being appointed again. Now, if Lacey is appointed to a library board, and she attends her first meeting and says, no way, this is not for me. I'm going to turn my resignation in. And so then they appoint Liz to fill Lacey's position. Liz then is filling what's called a partial term. It may be that it's 3 years and 11 months, but that is not considered Liz's first term. That is considered a partial term. So Liz then could fill that 3 years and 11 months of the partial term, and then could be on the board for 2 4-year terms of her own before she would have to go off the board for that year.
So not quite 12 years, but
Right.
a little under.
Right. That's a long time. And after that long, you definitely want to be off the board. And it's good for your library and your community to have someone with new and fresh ideas. So at the first meeting, after board members come on, so in May or June, the board sets the regular meetings, the days and the times and the place for each monthly meeting for the rest of the year. The board meets regularly throughout the year to conduct the business of the library, to pay the bills, to make sure the librarian gets paid and things like that. But the board does set a schedule. The reason for this is because board members are busy. First off, they need to be able to plan months in advance, but also because the public has the right to know when the board is meeting. The board is spending tax funds and needs to be very transparent about that. If someone from the public wants to know when are your board meetings for the rest of the year, you need to be able to provide that information to them.
Also,
Chair, yes.
oh, sorry. Once you have that time set, you do need to make sure that the building is open for people to come in.
Yes. Yes. Especially if you're meeting after hours or before hours, right?
Yes, and you can have a canceled meeting, but you have to post as soon as possible. Is there a
Yes.
set time, Gail? I can't quite remember.
No, because emergencies do happen. But if the meeting is canceled, it needs to be posted. And that can be as simple as a notice on social media or a sign on the door. Special meetings may be called by either the board chair or a majority of the members. Special meetings need to be handled in a special way. They are not a regular meeting. There needs to be an agenda, and the agenda needs to say what is going to be discussed at the special meeting. Nothing else may be discussed during that special meeting. There must be written public notice, including the meeting's purpose, and it needs to be posted 10 days in advance. And again, this can be on social media or it can be on a sign on the door, but the public needs to know that there's going to be a special meeting and what we're going to talk about. Now, there is a little bit of leeway on the days in advance number of posting, because if a tornado blows through and the roof blows off the building and you call a special meeting the next day, you still need to put the sign up somewhere that says we're having a special meeting, but waiting that full 10 days is going to cause damage to the collection, the furniture, and things like that. So there are circumstances where things can be just a little bit different. Usually in May, because new board members come on in May, officers are elected. You I'm sorry, I'm a little discombobulated tonight. You elect a board chair, a vice chair, a treasurer, and a secretary. Now, if you start as a secretary, that doesn't mean that you automatically then become the treasurer the next year, and then you become the secretary, and then you become the president. Those are called progressive offices, and we don't do that in the library world. I highly recommend you do not elect a brand new board member to an officer position. That's unkind. That's unkind. They don't really know what's going on yet. And that's really a fast way to turn them off for perhaps future volunteering at the library or for future work. Yes, Patty.
So I know there's a couple libraries here who experience this problem. What about those libraries who cannot get a quorum for the summertime because of things like, I don't know, harvest? And I know there's a library here that often has to skip.
Yes. There is nothing that says that the board has to meet every single month. It is best practice to meet monthly, but many boards are not able to meet in December or during the summer months. So what you want to do in your minutes is to say that, to record it in your minutes through a motion and a vote, is that bills are paid as they come due. So what that means then is that the bills can be paid without the board meeting and approving each individual bill. Libraries must operate on a cash basis, and they cannot go into debt by not paying their bills within 30 days. So that's an important thing to be able to do. Also, your librarian or your library director, same thing, just a different terminology, needs the guidance of the board. And by guidance, I don't mean that she sends everybody a text and everybody answers, or an email and everybody answers, or on Messenger and everybody answers. First off, those are serial meetings and they violate the Kansas Open Meetings Act. She can certainly send a text message, but nobody can reply all if it's a text message or an email message, because that way then those communications are open and transparent. But it may be then that the board needs to have a phone meeting where everybody phones in so they can vote. There needs to be something in place so that the library director knows what to do if there is a situation or an emergency.
So best practice in those situations would be go ahead and plan to have a meeting. And then if they have to cancel a meeting, these practices that you've put in place are the guidance if we cannot meet on a monthly basis.
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it, Patty. Thank you. Again, the industry standard and our recommendation is that the board meet every month, but sometimes there are circumstances that just doesn't make that possible. A board might not want to meet every month if the meetings run long. One of the reasons that meetings run long is because the board members don't get their packet ahead of time. Board members, you should be getting your packets a week before the meeting. That way you've got time to look things over, look at those finances, write down questions. Then there's something that is called a consent agenda. And because you've received your packet ahead of time and you've looked over the packet, you're able to very quickly go through all the old business. Everybody has read the minutes. Any questions about the minutes? No. Okay, let's move on. And you can approve the agenda ahead of time, and then you don't have to read the minutes. The treasurer doesn't have to read the treasurer's report. The library director doesn't have to read out loud their written report to the board. You can very quickly move through that old business. That makes your meetings more efficient. It also gives you more time for planning for the future, but it also makes your board members much more likely to want to attend a meeting. I would say that a board that is regularly meeting and it's only taking a half an hour, there's some things that aren't getting done, though. There's always a, well, what if sort of thing. So the board has a number of responsibilities. And what we find here, especially with most of the things on this list, is that these are the board and the library director working together. the library director is your boots on the ground. And they're down in the nitty gritty. In another Army term, they're in the trenches. But with the director, you plan the future of the library. You together set the budget for the library. The board's responsibility is to secure funding from the municipality to support the budget. Every January, we have some budget workshops. Those are in person. And I highly recommend that the treasurer and the librarian attend one of those. If you have not, they are usually located in several locations in the system. We walk you through the entire budget process. Last year, we had a librarian who's been in place for over 10 years. And she said that she learned so much at the budget workshop that she never knew before. So it's a good thing to attend. The board is the only one with the authority to approve library policies. The best policies are written with the board and the director working together. And many times the board will ask the librarian to contact CKLS and see if we already have a policy for that. The truth is that we have policies, sample policies for nearly everything in Word format. So no board has to start from scratch on any policy. Your time is far too valuable for you to be spending it on creating policies from scratch. The board has the responsibility to hire and fire the library director. As we say, hire an enthusiastic, dynamic librarian. And if they're not doing the job, to go ahead and terminate their employment. The board also sets compensation. Every library will be getting more money from the state library. Yay. The smallest amount will start at $1,000. And that's just awesome. I would recommend that librarians look at their librarian salary and see if it is comparable to salaries in CKLS of libraries and towns of a similar size. And if it is not, that perhaps they want to use some of that money to increase their library's salary. Sometimes board members think librarians don't do much other than babysit the books. And I can tell you that is not the case. Librarians need to be technology experts. They need to be experts in customer service. They need to be experts in the management and running of an organization or a business. And it's not an easy job to be a librarian. And I think that our librarians need to be appropriately compensated. Only the board can either lease or erect a building. And it is the board's responsibility to make sure that the annual reports are done. That is to the state library. That is also to the Central Kansas Library System, and to make some sort of report to the municipality about what's going on at the library. That most often happens when the budget is presented to the municipality in the May, June, July time period. Patty?
I have been filling the chat with links for things like sample policies, the consent agenda to give them some ideas, and then the general, what we have is something called a LibGuide. And a LibGuide is basically just pages and pages of resources that are available to you as library board members, as well as library directors. And I've put those links in the chat. All of that information is collected together, and we will send out a list of all of those links as well. So you'll have them in one place and be able to click from them at the end of this training tonight.
I will tell you, however, that the LibGuides are organized by librarians who think like librarians and use librarian terms. And if you can't find what you're looking for on there, please give us a call. We can speak English also. We have to think about it, but we can do it. One of the things that board members need to do every year and library employees is to sign a loyalty oath. And this is according to Kansas statutes annotated 75-4308. You are public officers and public employees because you receive tax money. It should be notarized. It is not a requirement that it be notarized, and that should be signed and dated and stored with the official library documents. It's a good practice just to do this in May or in June when your new board members come on. Write it on your board calendar of things that need to be done every month, and then just get it done. Make it a part of your practice. Nobody is going to come knocking and looking for this, but it is something that is required. Something else that we recommend that board members sign at about the same time is a conflict of interest statement. So most of our libraries are in small towns, and we count ourselves very lucky if we have one business that does painting or roofs or plumbing. But because we are in a small town, they might be board members. And so the conflict of interest statement will help those board members identify those potential areas of conflict. And so, for example, if my husband is the person in town who fixes roofs and the library needs repair, I am a library board member and my husband submits a bid for that repair, I would recuse myself from voting on that issue if they're voting on determining if they're going to hire my husband or not. That would be a conflict of interest. Thank you. Oop. So CKLS every year creates what's called the system plan. And you may have seen it in the past. If you haven't seen it for 2024, ask your librarian, because it is your roadmap to ensure that you get the full amount of funding possible from the Central Kansas Library System. This plan works on a 3-year cycle. In year 1, the plan is introduced and approved. In year 2, and also in year 1, it tells you what you need to do in year 2 to earn money that is paid out in year 3. So this year we approved the 2025, I didn't, but I say we, the 2025 system plan. It tells everybody what needs to happen in 2025. Libraries in 2025 do the work. Sometimes a board may determine that they don't want to work on a standard, and that's certainly a board's prerogative. But you do the work to earn the money that is paid out the next year in 2026. If a board chooses, for whatever reason, not to meet a standard, they need to be aware that for every standard not met, 10% of the base grant will be reduced. We're actually rather proud of our system standards. There aren't many of them. They are all things that modern libraries can easily attain. There's not busy work in there at all. And CKLS staff works very diligently to help train librarians and library staff to meet the standards. So the system standards for 2025 have not changed. The standards are the same. What has changed drastically is the format of the plan. In years past, it was 7, maybe 10 pages. Before that, it was 20. We're over, go back one, please, Liz. Right now, we're over 40 pages. The reason for that is because the state library required a change in format. What they wanted was for anybody at any time to be able to look at something that the system does, which they call projects, and determine what eligibility looked like, what ineligibility looked like, who was responsible for that, and how much it cost overall. So again, very transparent. You may not have known that CCALS does lamination for big projects, or that CCALS helps build websites. If you read through the system plan now, you will know everything that CCALS does. So the standards are that a voting representative from the library attends one of the full system board meetings in May or in the August-September timeframe. Now, starting next year, there will be one full system board meeting. This is a cost-saving measure, and that meeting will be in the August-September timeframe. We will have that date up early, and there will be one meeting. So it is going to be super important that your voting representative is someone who can attend that meeting. Most boards appoint their librarian, but if their librarian has 2 or 3 jobs, that's probably not going to be the best person. Not attending that meeting will cost the library 10% of their base grant. The second standard is that library staff attend and participate in a minimum of 6 CE events. Those may be online or in person, and they don't have to be produced by CCALS. Number 3 is why you're here tonight. It's your moneymaker. A quorum of the library board participates in a CE event. Number 4 is that the library actively lends and borrows on Share It, which is the statewide interlibrary loan. And number 5, Liz, is the summer library program. There are 3 parts for this. That is because the summer library program is funded with money received from the federal government through the Institute of Museum and Library Science. And it has to be reported back to them. That's why there are 3 parts. The first part is to submit a schedule, which is your marketing piece, to the youth services consultant. This summer library program is for elementary school age children. Many libraries now advertise and plan for all ages, but according to the federal government, it's for elementary school age children, and the library submits the evaluation before the deadline. All 3 parts need to be done to receive credit for this standard. Number 6 is that the library have an up-to-date internet website or a social media site, and they post at least once a month to that site. If you have no idea, if your librarian has no idea what to post, there are several libraries in CCALS that are particularly good to get ideas from. Otis, which is a small town, has sort of become the information hub for their community. She'll even post things like when the school buses are running mud routes, when the pizza food truck will be in town, when the commodities will be distributed. And then Kensington has great ideas. They're all book and reading related, very fun. Number 7, and this is the last standard, that the library has a continuous weeding program. A minimum of 3% of materials are withdrawn each year. And if you are a book lover, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when we talk about weeding a minimum of 3% of the library. I will tell you that a healthy library weeds itself by more than 3% every year. When we talk about weeding, we're talking about things that are no longer in good condition, things that are musty, smelly, pest infested. They got dropped in a mud puddle. The dog ate half of it. Those things that takes away, they don't belong on library shelves. And then we talk about things that are no longer safe or no longer valid. If you've got a book on breast cancer written from the 80s, is that the information that you want your doctor to use to treat you if you are a patient with breast cancer? The answer is absolutely not. Information like dairy products and books should come with an expiration date, because if it's kept after its expiration date, it really starts to stink up the rest of the collection.
If you're
CKLS has,
stuck, if you're stuck with a waiting project, or if you just have some weird thing that's sitting around on your desk and you're like, should I keep it? I've weeded by text message, by descriptions on the phone, and by actually coming out to your library and looking at that box of books that you're kind of afraid of. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if your library hasn't been weeded in the last 10 years, you definitely need to call me, because I need to bring a team out and we need to help you get rid of some things that your library doesn't need, but you might be emotionally attached to. But we talk
Right.
about how to remove that emotional attachment and make space for new things coming into your library. So don't be afraid of that 3%, because you'd be surprised at if I just touch your medical books, your 3% is done. But
Or your
there's plenty
computer
more that I
books.
can touch and help.
right, your computer books. Yeah, it can be hard to weed. CKLS also has a couple of archived webinars on weeding. Thank you, Liz. So we have information for you to start planning for next year. And it is all about money and what to do in right now. You probably have already submitted your library budget to the city. If you do not submit your budget to the city, and the city says, library, here's how much money you get, you're not really doing an important part of your job as a library board. We certainly understand that in most cities, the library is not going to get more money than you did last year, or it will be a little bit more. But the city needs to understand what it truly costs to run the library and how the library plans to spend its budget. And that's what we talk about when we talk about creating a library budget. A library budget can be a communication tool with your city. And especially if the library board, maybe a board member and the library director go and present the budget to the city. It's also a great opportunity to talk about how awesome your library is. How many people participated in summer library program last year? How many people attend book club every month? How many people checked out books? How many library card holders you have? There's so much information that a library should be sharing with their governing body. And during that budget presentation is the best time to do that. It doesn't have to be scary. So usually June, you submit a budget to the city. In the time frame between August and September 20th, you will know about your budget for 2025. You'll be able to find out how your city's revenue neutral rate hearing went, if they had one of those, how their budget hearing went. And definitely in October, November, you'll be able to finalize your next year's budget. You'll know how much money is projected for you to get. There are two caveats with that. The first one is that the city can only give you what they collect. And so if for 1 year there's a really high delinquent rate and they don't get $3,000 to $5,000 in taxes, that may be money that you don't. I mean, if the city doesn't have it, they can't give it to you. There is that. So as a board, you need to plan ahead for that, and you don't operate from paycheck to paycheck, so to speak. CKLS money comes twice a year now. It comes in March and in August. You can plan on that. And then the other thing that your librarian will know when your money from the city comes in. March is the first time, usually in June and in the fall again. Some counties will release a final payment in December, some do not. Now, when it comes to the end of the year, you need to have saved back 3 full months worth of operating expenses. And the reason for that is because your first money doesn't start coming in until March. It could be the end of March. So you need to be able to operate and pay your librarian in January, February, and all of March. So you don't want to operate from paycheck to paycheck. Patty, you want to say something? I can tell.
Yes, Gail, you mentioned money from CKLS. For some of our friends who have no idea, I think you should explain that money from CKLS because it sounds like a gift.
It feels like a Christmas present, quite honestly, because lots of money magically comes to your account. CCALIS is funded on a tax on rural properties in our 16 taxing counties. Those properties are so rural that they do not pay a local library tax. If you live in town, you can look at your tax letter and it says you pay a library tax. If you live outside of town, you don't pay a library tax, you pay a tax to CKLS, the Central Kansas Library System. CKLS takes that money and we operate the system. And after we've determined those expenses, then we give money out to libraries. Libraries, remember we had that 3-year cycle, libraries earn that money and then it is paid out to them. It's not free and it feels like mad money, but libraries earn what CKLS funds to them. And they know a year ahead of time what needs to be done to receive that. Did that answer your question, Ms. Patty? Good.
Yes, because you were pretty flippant about, well, you get money in March and August, and I'm like, well, I wish. So
I wish.
yes,
Me too. I'll hold my hand out.
right. And so
right.
if we've got new board members, because this is board basics, and
It is fundamentals.
and then you had alluded to as well to the $1,000 state library
Increase.
increase. So that's
Right. We
all
have
money
some
that's
libraries.
coming.
Right. So
But
you need to plan ahead to know how to use that money.
but libraries cannot operate just on state library money and CKLS money. And that's
Right.
where you have to go and present your budget to your city to make sure that you're getting as much money coming in from your city or municipality than you're getting from CKLS.
And
So
it's
you are
not
actually a
necessarily,
city library.
it's not necessarily dollars. It's maintenance of effort support. Because if your city pays for a building and pays for the insurance and pays for the utilities and the snow removal and the internet and things like that, those count as dollars because of that maintenance of effort.
And so
So-
with that, you don't really have a dollar amount for that maintenance of effort if they are doing all that work for you. We really encourage you to sit down with your city and work out what that cost is.
What those dollars equal out to. If you have trouble with that, contact us because we've worked with other municipalities before. So you know how much money you're going to get from CKLS. You know you're going to get extra money from the state. And you know what the system plan is. CKLS actually has an annual calendar for library directors, and it kind of says what needs to be done in January, February, March. It is something that the board needs to do. Does it have to do with finances? You should get your money from the city. It's things like the gap waiver, which is, I don't need to explain it tonight, but it's things like the loyalty oath. They should be signed in June. We also have when forms need to be submitted because part of maintaining that eligibility for funding from CKLS and the state is submitting forms by deadlines. I think one of the best things that CKLS does, and it may seem like overkill to some people, but most people very much appreciate them, is that monthly we send out emails reminding libraries that, hey, it's time to think about standards. Have you met the standard for weeding? Or here's how to see where you are now. Or, hey, don't forget, it's time to send your summer library program calendar to the consultant. Liz?
We have a question in chat.
Yes, I
Norma
saw that.
says, oh, okay.
Norma says, will that money from the state be every year? Norma, it will be from the state every year as long as it is funded by the legislature. So let's hope yes.
but we can't count on it every year.
Right. I think the answer will be most likely. I am doing everything I can to make that happen. I worked with the state librarian and the other system directors for the bulk of last year to increase that funding to you. And that is not something I'm going to stop. I'm going to keep working because we hoped that it would be with the minimum at $3,000, not $1,000. Now, if that happens, the amount of money that you receive from CKLS will decrease as the money from the state library increases, so that you're still getting the same dollar amount. It's just coming from a different funding source. Funding from the state has decreased drastically since the 80s. Since the 2015s, CKLS has increased the amount of the base grant to sort of make up for that lack of funding from the state. And just to toot our own horn, CKLS libraries are better funded than any other libraries in any other system across Kansas.
There's nothing in Kansas statute that says we have to give libraries money. It just says that
The
we have to
system has to give libraries money,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
It's something I'm very proud of that we work on. Tasha wants to know if we can post the link to check where she's at in her weeding process. We can certainly send that out on the Google group if they can't find it tonight to post it. Next slide, please, Liz. I think we're almost done. Well, yes. Budgeting can be scary. It need not be. CKLS offers a couple of in-person hand-holding budget workshops in January. It is kind of hand-holding. You can bring your information and you can leave with your full budget ready to go. We also have LibGuides to help trustees through the budget process. And the link for that is posted. And also in the first part of every year, we have a in-person workshop to help new librarians in particular through the CKLS annual report and through the state annual report. There's no reason to have a lot of anxiety about these. We're here to help. In December, we also have an online webinar all about the state report and the CKLS reports if your librarian cannot attend in person in January. Liz? It's important to know about COMA and CORA. We've talked about the Kansas Open Meetings Act and why if you're having a meeting, you need to set a date, time, and location. Why if you're having a special meeting, you need to advertise that. If you're going into executive session, there are only a very few reasons that a library board can do that. Most often it will be to discuss non-elected personnel, to talk about the library director's annual evaluation. We have a template to do that. The Kansas Open Records Act. I think one of the most important things you need to know is that your meetings need to be transparent, but that you must save forever your board packets. You cannot get rid of them. They are one of your most important records of the business of the board. We have additional resources for you. We've already talked about the LibGuides. The Kansas Public Library standards are changing. It's great. It's exciting, not scary. CKLS is going to have 2 sessions where we solicit advice or ideas from the librarians regarding the standards. The Kansas library standards are going to be called the guidelines. This is the first time that librarians have ever been asked. I'm excited about that. So be sure and watch your email and you'll know when that's going to happen. We have a trustee manual that is being updated. CKLS also has a trustee resource guide. And we've already talked about those sample bylaws for city libraries, townships, and districts. All of these links will be available to you.
Okay.
Thank you. Well, 2 minutes to spare? My goodness, you'd think I've done this before. What questions might you have for us in our last few minutes here? It's sometimes difficult to think of a question on the spot. I will tell you that CKLS has an 800 number that you can call. And we also, you can email us directly, or you can have your librarian email us with any questions you may come up with later.
So before we go, I'm going to throw out a few upcoming events. Earlier in the conversation, we discussed the strategic planning conversations, and those will be next month. I'll pop those back in the chat again. And also tomorrow night is Intellectual Freedom Beyond Censorship. And so we're going to talk about copyright, which actually is library responsibility, to know what it is and to follow it and to educate patrons about patron privacy, which is the probably the most important tenet of librarianship. And we're going to talk about some examples of ways that we fall into those pitfalls of breaking that privacy and confidentiality that we have with our patrons. And then we're going to talk about library access for all tomorrow evening as well. And then on
what to do.
oh
Yeah, what to
I
do
forgot about the big one.
if the police come knocking on your door asking for library information. You'll definitely want to watch that now or as an archive and have your librarian watch it. And Krista, thank you. Go ahead, Patty.
And when she says, when local law enforcement comes calling, she's giving examples of, oh, hey, I want to know who sits on that computer every day at 2 o'clock, or I want to know what book scale Santy has checked out.
Or someone's gone missing in your county. Can you give me their library record so I can see if they've been to the library so we know how to search for them if they've gone missing? Lots of good stuff there.
On Thursday this week, we're going to lighten it up just a little bit with the elements of a good library director report. And we're going to talk about how statistics and stories have to work together and how they give you as a board a good picture of where your library is right now and help you, as we mentioned earlier, planning is your job to get your library where you want to go. And so those elements of a library director's report actually are is vital information for you, and you might not even know that you need to be asking for it. And so we're going to help you do that as well. And then August is, I could say it's a little light for you all, but it's not. We have the 4 strategic planning conversations.
And those come with a dinner.
And we have a library programming workshop on August 13th in Stockton. And then on August 20th, library staff can meet us and trustees can meet us for something called Explore the Questions That Matter. And basically, this is the time that CKLS sits back and listens to what you all need to know, either from each other or about CKLS and the services. And those are monthly activities 6 times a year. And this will be in Long Island, and that's from 4:30 to 6:30 in the afternoon. We serve pizza and dessert, and it's just a very relaxed atmosphere, but it's also a chance to see libraries. And we have 2 more of those coming up yet this year. We'll go to the Ellenwood School, and we'll also see the Minneapolis Public Library in Minneapolis, Kansas. So we got lots of things happening. So we hope that you won't hesitate to reach out and say, I want to be a part of something, but I don't know how, or how to ask your librarian what they need from you. And we encourage library directors to ask their boards what they need from them. And we know on the night that we do the basics, we give you 58 minutes of information all pummeled on you, but we hope that the training that your librarians have received from us so far will help you over the next few months digest all that information and make you the excellent trustees we know that you will be.
this webinar will be recorded. So if there's any parts you found me absolutely fascinating and you must go
it's-
back and watch it again, or you're having trouble sleeping and you'd like me to lull you to sleep, Liz will post that link and you'll be able to retrieve that from your librarians.
So the last thing I'd like to end with is Gail talking about the most important volunteers.
Well, yes, I am in my 16th or 17th year. It's getting a little fuzzy now. I very early realized that library board members are the most important volunteers in the community. And the reason for that is because there are actually statutes that govern what they do. Early legislators realized the importance of library board members and that they would be handling tax money. And they enacted statutes that largely have not changed to help guide those trustees and board members in what they're doing. And it's so important, the work that you do. In many small communities, the library is all there is that's left. The schools have consolidated and moved out of town. The businesses
Grocery
have
stores
closed.
closed.
The grocery store has closed, and the library is what you've got left. And we have seen time and time again that a community can be revitalized when the library becomes an exciting place responsive to its community members. And as trustees and board members, I think that's one of your most exciting responsibilities, is to be able to respond to that. Thank you for spending your time with us. We very much appreciate it. Ruth, I want to say hello to you. I saw you look up. And just thank you so much.
Good
Have a
job.
lovely evening.
You too.